Hello chaps and chapettes. I've decided to do a video on the cost of Eurorack, and the reason being is because I keep seeing these people doing these videos on the cost of Eurorack, and I wouldn't go down the path that they keep showing, so I thought I'd tell you about my journey just to give you some idea. So, how did I get into this? Right, first thing is I'd bought this little baby, and this is the one that you can hear. An MS-20. I highly recommend it. The MS-20, yes, it's got patch bass, it comes with patch leads, it has a keyboard, and I don't think you can beat it for value. An alternative consideration is you might want to get a Behringer unit, something like the Neutron or the Pro 1, and then buy a key step, and I mean the early key step, because that's got plenty of functionality and it's selling at quite a good price. And I think you might find, so that's the Arturia key step, but I think you might find that Behringer are about to bring out an absolute copy. We won't go over that. Right, so what happened is I bought the MS-20, and then I was invited to a Eurorack evening in Denmark Street. This is a while ago, and I met a couple of people, and one of the people that I met who spoke to me and gave me some advice was Justin Owen of Abstract Data. And he had a very large case, and he said to me, right, you've got to consider buying the case first. I was astonished at the price. And the one thing that you have to consider, it isn't just considering the price of the case, you have to consider its dimensions. Now, the first case I bought is this Dope for P6. It's a portable case, and it comes with a lid. And I'm glad I bought this first because it opened up the world of buying Dope for components. And the one thing you need to consider with Dope for components is the depth. Some of their best components, and the filter there is one of my favourite, is very deep, as is this component here. So you have to look at the depth of your case, and if you look at a lot of the what they call the skiffs, they're far too shallow. So I purchased the case, and it was brilliant because the pound to the euro was at an all-time high, and I bought this for about £300. And so then I decided what I'll do, and this was Justin's advice. He said, do not buy a complete system, and I totally agree with him. Buy a case and maybe fill it with things you're familiar with first. And he said, how about copying that MS-20 you've got? So that's what I did. Now for me, and what drives me, is 60s and 70s subtractive synthesis. That's what really broke the mould, and for me brought out a new genre of music, and that's what really impressed me. MS-20 and many of these now copies from Behringer, like the Model D, use that idea. So this is what I bought to put in my case originally. 2 VCO, same as an MS-20. Different though, but there you go. They have different outputs, but these are 4 outputs: saw, pulse, triangle and sine, and to be honest, that's what you want. It's got a number of inputs, including pulse width modulation. The MS-20 hasn't got pulse width modulation. It has a switch, so you can octave switch. I'll tell you now, that's really useful, and you do want that. What else did I purchase at that time? I purchased a single ADSR unit, but I soon realised I wanted more. But that's what I bought. I bought an LFO. And one thing I failed to say here is that when I started on this journey, I decided that I'd treat it like pocket money, so it was affordable. So I bought the case, and I did buy these components. I'll carry on. But I told myself I'm not going to spend more than £100 on any one component to go in this case. You're going to immediately say, well, that one there is more than that. Well, that wasn't what was originally there. What was originally there was a wave multiplier, which I bought later. But I originally had a wave multiplier in there. Okay. So as I've said, I set a budget, bought a case, it was £300, and then I told myself that nothing would be more than £100. I did actually get these two VCO together in the package with these other items I'll explain for less than 200. They're more now, but hopefully with Brexit the pound will gain against the euro, and hopefully no tariffs are brought in. So guys, keep watching and seeing what you can get these things for. Right, I've got an LFO, absolutely critical, and it's got a number of outputs. I bought an ADSR. Yes, I needed more than one, but this was to do with in the first place. I actually bought the Extreme filter first and was a little disappointed, thinking I was copying the MS-20. It doesn't really copy the MS-20 because you need two of them in series. You need a high pass and a low pass. Very quickly I bought this after getting some recommendations. We'll come back to that. Love this filter. I absolutely love it. It's got a band pass output and it's got various low pass outputs. I probably use the lower two the most, the 6 dB and the 12 dB. Got that. Right, if you've got two VCOs you need a mixer. I got a mixer. I got this one. It will mix CV and audio, but I was using it in this case for audio. So, two VCO into a mixer, through a filter, and then an ADSR envelope and an LFO. I also got this VCA, which is a dual output VCA. So there's two of them, and you can run them in even exponential mode or linear mode. I can't remember the exact price, but it was probably about £50. LFO, ADSR, between 50 and 70 perhaps. Right, after getting this, I realised I wanted it to be a bit more, how can I put it? It was bland. So if you look back on my previous videos, it soon occurred to me I needed some effects. So I watched a load of videos and I actually bought one of my favourite now, which is the flashback delay pedal. And I still use it, so look at my other videos. But I also thought, well, how else can I thicken the sound? And that's when the wave multiplier came in. And the recommendation was to combine this wave multiplier with the quad LFO there on the left hand side, which is what I did originally to get some thicker sounds. So that wasn't in there, the wave multiplier was. Very quickly I realised, right, because when you're using LFOs, and the dope for LFOs, unlike some other the modern ones, go negative voltage. So they go minus and plus. So if you run those straight into things like a quantizer, you're going to run into trouble. So very quickly I realised I needed some utilities. So I got an attenuverter. This allows me to reduce the voltage and also shift its polarity, and also attenuate it, also shift it all positive or shift it all negative. If you're using the dope for type LFOs, you need to do that. You need to take it from the negative voltage into the positive voltage. Then you can use it with things like Quantizer. So then I thought, I need a Quantizer, and these dope for units. It's 2-channel, there's different modes, there's a selector switch inside. These replicate each other now, so I can run 2 channels into each and get quantization. The attenuverter helps me with this. I then got links, because what I used to do is I used to go to Denmark Street and other places in London, but Denmark Street used to have Red Dog Music, now unfortunately gone bust. What a shame. And I used to go there and buy things and get some deals. And that's one of my recommendations. Talk to people. Some of the companies now, just you can get on the phone and just try and do a deal. Get the price down. Particularly with a Eurorack, if you say you've just got a new case and you're just starting to fill it, well, they know you probably come back again. You're probably going to buy more units. So then the other thing I realised is I needed some percussion. That's when I met Erica Since. So I met Erica Since at a Brighton modular event a number of years ago, and again I managed to get some deals. I managed to get drums, the trigger unit, which has 4 outputs, so it will actually drive. So 2 of these outputs can drive drums. They said, oh, you need 2 drum units. I said, no, I'll just have 1 because I'm going to get some other percussion units, which I did. But anyway, I got drums, I got trig, and I got a sequencer, SEQ, another fantastic unit. And I got these, each one of these, for less than £100 each. Again, meeting my criteria, not putting me in debt. Gradually building on the case, starting with a subtractive synthesis dual VCO voice first, with a couple of filters, and then adding in some percussion and a sequencer. I've also got an SQ1, which actually I bought when I bought the MS-20. Again, that was a spur of the moment purchase. I'd ordered the MS-20, I went to the store to get it, and then I asked, how much can you give me an SQ1? And while I'm thinking about it, this is the thing you can't forget. Cables. And as you build up, you're going to need loads of patch cables of different lengths. And some of them you're going to want, which allow you to stack them up, particularly when using dual VCOs. So again, phoning up, getting in store, buying an item, particularly a high priced item, maybe they'll throw something else in. After getting these, I realised actually I'd like to have some randomness, you know, kind of starting the ability to be a bit more generative. So branches, I bought this. Again, it was a visit to the shop. I did a deal and I bought branches from Multiple Instruments, which allows you to have probabilistic choices, choose a probability. I use this very often with the hi-hat, which can get really annoying if it doesn't have some randomization on it. So I've gone subtractive synthesis voices, different filters, a sequencer, something different. I've got an alternative. I've got the SQ1 and I've got this Erica Synth. A drums output. What I failed to say, this drum module has a number of different memories in it, and you can program it using Apple products. I've struggled with other devices, but you can program it. I use an iPad mini, an old iPad mini to program it. You can also use a laptop. I've done that as well. So it's got a number of memories in there, and you can program in different drum sequences. In doing that and adding to my drums, I brought the 2 HP hi-hat because I was running out of space. I also wanted to have another way of mixing, and so I bought this IntelliGel dual VCA, and it will mix because you can effectively put 2 voices in here and get a single output. Other things that I then added, and I've actually done this recently because I used to have peaks in here, Multiple Instruments peaks, and the reason I got peaks was to add another ADSR or be able to have alternative extra LFO or have a tap LFO. That's really useful. So peaks used to do that, and it also added some drums if I needed those as well, because peaks is 2-channel. Unfortunately, Multiple Instruments don't do peaks anymore, but I understand that other companies are effectively reproducing it. A later addition was this module, launch codes, because launch codes enables you to have 5 outputs. It can either add rhythm via gate and ADSR to voices, or with triggers you can trigger and use it as an alternative to drive drums or this hi-hat module here. Don't know if I mentioned links. Links is just enables me to have another way of mixing either CV or audio. Now, to keep the cost down, one of the things that I also did was I decided to consider using Thonk, in my instance in the UK, to build DIY units. So one of the first units I built, and it's not in my case here, is the Bastel T-kick, which is a kick drum. And so I built that from a kit, and again that kept the price under £100. Another unit that I built almost at the same time was this unit, Stokia, by Rebel Technology, which has 2 Euclidean channels. Was really pricey if I looked at buying it as a discrete unit from a shop. Again, I bought it from Thonk as a kit. Thank you very much to Thonk for continuing and they're expanding, and they're a great, how can I put it, a great seller to give you an alternative and build your own unit. So I built this. It wasn't very complicated to build. It was just time and then just setting it up and get it set. So this is how I built my case, and I've got some notes that I just want to go through here. So in summary, I took the idea of a dual VCO subtractive synthesis unit. I then realised I needed some utilities such as CV mixing, audio mixing, quantizing, attenuverting. I did say I had peaks in here. That gave me the alternative for ADSR, extra ADSR. I now use a extra 2 HP here, and some drums percussion. Much later on I did get this ARP unit, 2 HP ARP. That didn't fall under my £100 criteria, but I added it later. So, how are you going to get into this? Right, the first thing I'd say is before you commit to buying a case, which is going to be much more expensive than I paid, get yourself on VCV Rack. And to do that, I suggest looking at Omri Cohen's videos. They are excellent. And there are others, but Omri Cohen, he's an absolute master of VCV Rack. I still, to this day, watch his videos because he gives me ideas. And the good thing about VCV Rack, software based, is not only can you share your patches between users, so I do download Omri Cohen's videos, but the other thing you can do is you can actually try out in software some devices that you may consider buying. So for me it was Multiple Instruments. Almost all the Multiple Instruments devices apart from Peaks are on VCV Rack. Things like rings, things like plats, which I've actually got in my case below, and that'll be possibly another video on how I got going with a second case. Now on VCV Rack there's the Instruo devices. I think they're a Scottish based company. Now if you were going to buy those units, you are pushing yourself into a world of significant cost, and maybe if you don't like it, the question is, would you be able to sell on those units without losing too much money? But that's my consideration anyway. The only thing with VCV Rack is you're going to be limited by your PC performance. But if you're just trying out components, like the Multiple Instruments components and the Instruo, they've even got Erica Sense. I'm sure it's still there. It's the drums unit. That's still in VCV Rack. And there are just basic VCOs where you won't be limited by performance. So, say you try VCV Rack, you think, gee, I really want to get into this. Right, don't go out and buy a complete system. Take the advice I took from Justin over an Abstract Data. Choose a case. So I've got 2 cases. I've got this P6 Dope case. It's very deep and it accepts these components that I've already pointed out that are really deep. That's the problem. The depth. Will it fit them? Even the new Behringer cases do look at the depth. I've also got a Mantis case, and yes, my dope for components, some of them will not fit in that Mantis case. Right, to design your case, use modulargrid.net. Look in my description and you can click the modular grid links and you can see my cases as they are now. That's the resource I use to plan the case and plan the real estate, because the size of this case is prime real estate, and this is where the new Behringer components are going to use up this real estate with their size. So are you really getting value for money? If you want to look at what components are probably worth buying, because you could pass them on, that's the other thing. I've got maths. It was significantly over my £100 limit. It was one of the unit I decided I wanted because everybody was using it. It's a great unit, and I'm sure if I went to sell it, I could sell it again because people want it. So go on to Muff Wiggler. No, it's not a porn site. Go on to Muff Wiggler, and then you'll be able to see what components are maybe worth doing. I did that for a lot of these devices here. So, in summary, you're going to get a case. You may use VCV Rack to consider what components. Where's your music going to go? What kind of components do you want? Use Modular Grid to plan that case. And then in terms of building your case, you're going to have sound sources. It might not be VCOs, it might be something else. You're going to want filters, I would think. Filters, wave shapers, ADSR. There's alternatives, maths for example, but that's a significant cost. LFO you definitely will want for modulation. You will want an attenuverter and you will want other utilities. Branches I would consider as a utility. The one thing that you don't want is a one-trick pony. I like Eurorack, particularly Dopefer. It's great. You are getting real value for money. You've got lots of inputs and outputs. And with your cables and your patch cables, don't forget those, you can then experiment and have a great time. But what you don't want is a one-trick pony that has cost you thousands and thousands of pounds. So my final advice is, do not get into debt with Eurorack. That's ridiculous. I treated it like pocket money. I also made some sacrifices because I ride motorbikes. And one of the things I told myself is just stick with the motorbikes I've got now. Don't go and replace them. Pointless. So I saved with my motoring fund, which enabled me to spend more money on my Eurorack, which after I filled this case up, I really realised I'm really enjoying this. And add in some standard synthesizers, and those are becoming, I mean, it's such amazing value for money. So consider adding some keyboard synths. And do what the original pioneers did. And the original pioneers for me, Klaus Schulze, Tangerine Dream, Jean-Michel Jarre, the list goes on, and then we have the 80s guys like John Fox, Gary Newman, Human League, OMD, Depeche Mode. So there we go, that's it. It's been a long video. I hope you're still with me. I'd love to see a comment if you are still with me listening to this. But the final advice is, it is a wonderful world, but do try VCV Rack first. It's completely free. Omri Cohen supplies patches, if you can look at his early videos or even his later videos. It works via a library. It's a bit like VSTs, if you understand that. It's a library. It's online. So look it up. see if you want to go on this journey. But don't forget, to make these things sound good, you need effects, which is why I got the Black Hole DSP, and in my other case below, which I might do another video on, leave a comment if you'd like to see that. In my other case, I've actually got some other discrete effects units, because a synthesizer without effects really is completely bland and you will be bitterly disappointed. Okay, that's me. I'm done. Chaps and chapettes, if you're still there, I'd love to hear a comment. I'm going to rise up that lovely Blackbird, which is playing out of my other case. And what I forgot to say, the disting. Disting Mark III I've got originally. I've now got 3 distings and I've got 2 Mark IVs. And that isn't outside in the garden. That's here playing from a disting. Right, I'm going. Chaps, chapettes, that's it. Over and out.